Thank you, everyone. I have less than 30 minutes, so I'm going to move quite fast as soon as my screen is up. There we go. Good. All right, so I think given the room is full of health tech entrepreneurs, I'm going to try to make this as practical as possible. I liked a lot of the things said on the last panel. I think there's real value in learning from the people on the field, in the arena, where the challenges are, where the friction is. So instead of giving you just standard gyan and stuff that puts you to sleep after lunch, I'm going to try and lob every single problem we've seen over the last decade or so in health tech in India. It's a confusing space. It's a difficult space. It's one of those intriguing, chicken and egg type solutions. Obviously, India has a very large healthcare need, a big gap in infrastructure, a lot of spending. Most of the spending is high out-of-pocket burdens. We need more technology. This is a country that leapfrogs. We do strange things like UPI and Aadhaar at population scale, and it works. At the same time, we build the Arogya Setu app, and it's free, and it's a bunch of volunteers. It's the largest number of vaccinations on the planet, over 2 billion, and no one made a single rupee from that. So all of this is true in India, right? We do weird things, and we save people's lives, but not enough companies are unicorns making money, hundreds of millions of dollars of profit, etc. So reality is a confusing superposition of many interesting truths, all true at once. To be a founder in this category especially, you need to be extremely good at cutting through that fog and finding where the real value is. And in our point of view, it's about time now for large health tech companies to be built in a way that they're profit-oriented, where the customer's requirements are clear and they pay for it. Both has to be true. You heard a very interesting example with those textile manufacturers who will use your technology as a POC and buy 2 years of regulatory delays. That happens a lot in healthcare, by the way, with insurance and hospitals especially. So we have to reach a point where all these numbers, value, TAM, SAM, SOM, et cetera, starts becoming realizable revenue in your hands. Now the problem with that is the rate at which technology is growing in the rest of the world. AI, SaaS, logistics, consumer, fintech. As a VC, I have easier ways to build larger companies that make clearer value to me as an investor in the early stage. Why would I take these risks, right? Why would I work in health tech? Why would I care to go through all this hassle? It's easier for me to fund a food delivery company, although I don't, but the typical VC in India has, than taking all these silly risks in health tech. So as a health tech entrepreneur, I also want you to be aware of the opportunity cost around you. So I'll spend a few minutes on that. The good news at the end of this opportunity cost section is that health is becoming even more important. After all this AI, everything happens and it lands, and there's certainty about what AI will actually mean for the human species. Everyone's going to realize the only thing that really matters is how healthy you are and for how long. So we're going to do a full cycle and come back to healthcare. And that's going to be the big opportunity for you guys. Hopefully, your companies last that long to take advantage of it. So I just want to paint a picture to you for where are we going in the next 25 years. And I'll keep this short because I've spoken some of these slides before at a TIE event. But these are the relevant slides. We're going to definitely be heading towards a future where every single human being is assigned X number of personalized N=1 AI agents for health, for education, for legal, accounting, you name it. They are going to be these digital companions around you, fake boyfriends, fake girlfriends, fake whatever, fake friends. Everyone is going to have a few of these hovering around their lives. So if you are in the market to build whatever version of this is going to land in health tech, you're in the right space. And VCs are also thinking about this aggressively. As you would have seen in the news, a lot of funding is going here. We're also going to see a lot of substitution of human labor. So it's already happening in war, it's already happening at home, it's already happening in construction. That's a South Korean construction site. They're already using robots to spray concrete on their new skyscraper installations. Where is the biggest gap of skilled labor in any market, developed or developing, in healthcare? We don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough specialists, doctors are overworked, nurses are going on strike. So the substitution of human labor with whatever version of something artificial on the physical side, that's going to be a huge opportunity. And I think if Dozy is not speaking today, but they would have spoken about how large that need is already today. Third, I like something the founder said, don't go to Salesforce, don't pay other people for software. Yes, every human being is going to be a programmer. Vibe coding, as it's called, is definitely a real phenomena. How much of that code is actually useful? I don't think that's a very high percentage today, but it's going to get better. It's going to obviously improve. So the friction to building software as a health tech founder is going to go away. In fact, you don't need hundreds of people and tens of millions of dollars. You can do it with the proverbial kids in the garage type model. Write your own code, get your own first $1 million in revenue without needing to build a large tech team. That's already possible in other sectors. It's definitely going to be possible in health as well. This is also true. It's actually already true. It's going to get even more true very fast. But there are going to be 9 billion people on the internet. There are going to be 100 billion agents on the internet at the same time. It will not be an internet for humans. It will be an internet for bots. There are a lot of threats with bots going on Twitter and social media and so on. You're seeing that in our neighborhood in Nepal as we speak. What happens when these bots become threats to our lives and our health spans as well? They hack our data, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're building cyber for healthcare, every hospital, every insurance company, any data provider, anywhere in the world is paranoid about the liabilities that come from being exposed in this dimension. So cyber for healthcare also is going to become a very valuable vertical very quickly. If you're a really deep tech founder and you want to build something like science fiction, human brain interface, machine human interfaces and so on, that's also going to be a big opportunity. In fact, it already is. Musk's most recent and most interesting company is Neuralink in this space. But this is the holy grail. If in health tech you are able to get here, where you definitely give N=1 personalized diagnosis to every human being, the value here is almost infinite. This is by far the holy grail, from Johnson & Johnson and Roche to Dozy and EkaCare. If Vikalp is here, he'll speak about that. Everyone wants this, right? So if you're not building towards this today, you're already late. Start thinking about if you can get to this level quickly. Of course, in the meantime, all of those robotics, all of that kind of health tech innovation, also import substitution, building for India, that's also going to be a large opportunity. And finally, my entire section on the future closes on this slide. So in the end, health is the only thing that matters. Everyone wants to pick their own baby's genetics, and that's already true in China. It's going to be true in the rest of the world. And substituting failed organs, so 3D printing and so on, we already have a few companies here in Bangalore. All this is going to become the need of the hour. So it's not today, but it's going to be very soon. So the good news to take away from here is health is going to be at the core of all these singularities, good and bad, that are likely predicted over the next 25 years. And think of AI now and this last wave of technology we're in. I say last because no one can see beyond this. As a superposition of all the waves of technology that have happened, all the S-curves are superimposed over the last at least 55 years. So it's a big deal, and that's why this AI hype cycle is strange, weird. It's consensus so quickly, especially in the US. It's a unidimensional innovation market right now. Either you're AI or you don't exist. So it's become very pointed there. But this S-curve of AI or machine intelligence is going to touch everything. We're already in phase 2. So phase 1, most countries are behind here because they don't have an NVIDIA or whatever, or a ChatGPT. But phase 2 is where India is probably going to do very well, building these apps, building co-pilots, building AI for gaming, AI for edtech, AI for medtech, AI for drug discovery. You're already seeing these getting funded in the news. Edge AI and physical AI is where the futurists are already jumping into and where a lot of that early funding has started. Musk is already in phase 4 and trying to go to Mars with robots only, no human beings, weird AI. So the whole world is forming consensus that that's where we're going. And therefore, when you're innovating for India or from India to the rest of the world, understand what the world is forming a consensus on quickly and work backwards from the customer. I don't like founders in 2025 spending 3 years on a product and then figuring out no one's going to pay for it. That is a waste of your time. That's especially true in healthcare. Work backwards from the customers. Identify your customers, identify them fast, build a sales team before you build a product team. That's always true in healthcare, especially if it's B2B. And work backwards and figure out their needs. So I think don't blame yourself if it's hard, because even the customers today don't know what they want. Definitely true in healthcare globally. But working backwards is going to be the strongest way to figure that out fast. In the meantime, the next 10 years, the urgency to do this in India is important. Because we've come a long way. When I was in college, we had a prime minister that said in parliament, Indians don't have a right to aspire to be a top 10 economy. That time we were, I think, 12th or 13th. In 15 years, we're almost third. We're fourth now. And we'll stay third, obviously. US and China are far ahead. But this race that we've gone through in the last 10 years, we've added $2 trillion of incremental GDP. We've grown 100% in terms of raw GDP size, despite the rupee declining in value. No other large economy in the world is going to be growing at this rate. No other country in the world, except China and the US, are going to be adding an additional 4 trillion of GDP over the next 10 years. A lot of you are senior folks here, in your 40s, 50s, 60s, older than I am. You went through hell growing up in India where scarcity was the default experience. We are going to get into this future where Indians will struggle with prosperity for the first time. A lack of scarcity usually means prosperity, but a lack of scarcity in India will mean a struggle for what is this new experience. We don't know what it is. So our governments are not ready for prosperity. We are not ready for a 10 trillion economy, but it is happening as we speak. So build for that future, build for that India. That's why work backwards from the customer, work backwards from wherever they are in their needs cycle. Do not build product before you know what they're going to pay for. Secondly, this is a country that is the only other country in the world going past 10 trillion. The US will be close to 40, China will be close to 40. No other country crosses 10, forget 20, except India. So if you're here for the next 25 years, this is a tailwind that honestly, if you don't catch on to, you will miss the biggest opportunity of your lifetime. We've also thankfully, finally, after 80 years almost, taken care of all these legacy burdens we have. So poverty has fallen from 53% to 16%, extreme poverty from 12 to 2. If this is possible in 14 years, why didn't it happen before? Good question. Tough answer for the politicians. But the good thing is it's finally happened. So we don't have to keep worrying about the bottom, worrying about these legacy problems. Innovate for the future, think high, think large, think global. And if you think global, get profitable quickly, because we're already the 4th largest equity market in the world. We're definitely going to be the 3rd in the next 5 years. Indian companies are now more profitable per unit of revenue than any other economy in the world except the US. 13.5% of GDP is the cumulative sum of Indian profits pre-tax. And you'll see it in all the charts now. As China becomes larger, they're getting less profitable. There's a lot of structural problems in China. India seems to get more profitable, even though it's more competitive, and the world with the tariff situations become a little bit more stranger. We're also a much younger country than I'm comfortable with. I thought there were too many millennials. I'm a millennial. There's too many Gen Zs. I don't know about you, but if you try to hire these people, it's absolutely maniacal how to deal with them. So people say demographic dividend, I say demographic nightmare. I don't know how to deal with them. And I have kids now and they're after Gen Alpha, so I don't know how to deal with that either. But the good thing is we'll have enough young people eating too much Cheetos, so they're going to need more health tech. So again, many more customers, figure out what you can solve for them. But finally, this is the most important thing. And jokes aside, this took a long time. Last year, we added 33 million Indians to the world global consumer class. It's a strict definition, per capita income, et cetera, how much they spend. No one thought India would ever cross China, but we did, right? Quietly. There was no big, prime minister speech, press release. No one really spoke about this, but it happened. And by 2030, we're going to grow 46%. We'll have very close to the same level of China in terms of the net global consumer class spending citizens on a per unit of income basis. This is huge. This means suddenly people are not struggling about, I don't want to pay for Spotify, I'll get it for free on YouTube. All these really silly behaviors go away. Right? People are more loose with their money, they're spending, they're taking care of themselves, their lives matter more to them. The value of a human life in India finally means something. And that means that's your opportunity. Right? That's why health matters. And so forget about building for the India of the past. It is dead, it is done, put it behind. There's too much pain and suffering. Let's forget about it. Build for this India, build for the India of the future. Whether enterprise or consumer, this is the mix. And this is the future I'd like to be a part of as an early stage investor. If you're making in India, yes, it's tough. It's getting easier every year. We have to grow. We're going to grow at least 4x in the next 10 years. We're exporting, of course, we're very good at exporting software. We export more software than Saudi Arabia exports fuel. But we have to start ramping up all the other manufacturing exports as well. And all of these FTAs, the 30 FTAs that we've cracked in the last 2 years, are all the foundations for our physical exports going up as well. We're also innovating a lot more. Once government stops being a nanny state, gets out of this regulatory overburdening, they allow good scientists, good professors to commercialize their research. We quickly grow in the index of global innovation. We're just under 40, we should be at 20, 15 is a target, and we should be in the top 15 in the world in the next 10 years. But on a scale basis, only China and the UK, only China and the US invest more and get more value out of their R&D than India now, which is a huge accomplishment. Doesn't feel like that for most people I meet in India, but we are making extraordinary progress here. So put all that together, it's a nice story, but this is where it gets real. Corporate profits, size of market, health being more important, all that matters to me as a VC, because you can go IPO if I invest in you. Indian tech companies going IPO are valued almost double their Nifty peers because they grow faster and they are more profitable on a promise of revenue and guidance in the future. The blue line there is the Indian Startup Index, 45 listed tech companies as of early this year. That outperformed the Nifty 50, S&P 500, BSE Midcap, NASDAQ 100. This was when all that AI wave was happening in the US, by the way. So if the Indian Startup Index, this mutual fund doesn't exist, someone should make it by now. But if it did and you put 100 rupees, you grew almost double since Jan 2023. This is the index you all need to work backwards from if you're innovating. Be part of this. There are 0 health tech companies today in this index. It's about time that changes. So as a startup ecosystem, we are going to be part of a 10 trillion economy. And the healthcare reality, therefore, today, while it's very challenging and difficult and extremely hard to invest in, and a lot of reasons why, why would you go through all this pain? The previous slide was the answer, because when you go IPO, if you're that profitable and you grow that quickly, it's really worth it. So all of these things, since I don't have much time, I'm going to go through a little faster. But you have to innovate for a country where on that path to becoming very prosperous, on the part of high out-of-pocket spending, being substantiated by higher incomes, but hopefully more effective insurance over time. We don't have a safety net from the government, even though I don't think a single person in this room will have an Ayushman Bharat coverage. But we are now getting to that place where more and more of that formalization is happening, even for the upper 50% of India, like we are in this room. The distribution of demographics as well makes this a very interesting time to be innovating healthcare. I would actually pick an elderly care opportunity versus a young or maternity care opportunity today, because I think that problem, we have 25 million babies, 2.5 crore babies are born in India every year. Most of them now survive. Infant mortality is very low. So that seems to be a solved problem, but we don't take care of our elderly very well. We don't have continuum care centers. We don't have professional services. Some of you are innovating in that space. So you'll actually see that the demographics, even though we have the largest number of young people on the planet, we have a large number of elderly that are getting ignored in that mix. And building for them, solving for them, therefore, could be a lucrative opportunity yesterday. So think about demographics through and through. Don't just focus on the headlines and the mainstream consensus. There are opportunities here that in healthcare, which are very basic, very obvious, that you can monetize and profit from immediately. We also think that startups shouldn't build infrastructure. It really has been a waste of time. Even in fintech, where India, you can argue, is very far ahead, startups didn't build UPI, startups didn't build Aadhaar. It was a force of God, a few very highly motivated people who worked with this bureaucracy, got that live, the banks paying for it for 10 years. Finally, of course, it's population scale and a huge success. But the pain that went into that is pain startups cannot take. You don't have the balance sheets to do that. So don't build infra if you can avoid it. Build on top of infra that works. The UHID, ABA, et cetera, if Vikalp is here, he'll speak about it. Those are going to be the tailwinds that you latch onto, and hopefully you're first to market. So please be sharp, practical, pragmatic about infrastructure. Don't be a romantic when it comes to infrastructure. That is not going to be a problem you will have the balance sheet to solve if you're in healthcare. And therefore, the need to understand some of these very big, ambitious projects, even though they're taking some time, there's a little bit of bureaucracy, that opt-in has not yet happened. It's worth the patience, because when it finally does go live at scale, it will actually work. There'll be rapid adoption. It will surprise everyone, just like UBI, just like Aadhaar. So that's why it's worth being patient, and that's why I would say don't build substitutes for this. Latch onto them early, work with the systems here, and wait for them to become population scale. We also think that while the market keeps looking large, and there's a big public push, there's a big private push, the propensity to pay as a public customer and a private institutional customer is very different. The challenges in collections and reimbursements are very high. Many medtech companies have given up in India and gone to the US, wherever else. That challenge continues on the ground, right? And I speak about those challenges when I come to the end of the talk on the last slide. But here you need to be very sharp as founders and figure out the wedges to collect what is owed to you, price correctly, have great margins underneath them, aim for profitability, because this market really values profitability and pays up for it, like I showed you in that index slide. So what are the pain points today, and where are we seeing innovation focused on? So we see a lot of innovation today on the patient side, but less and less of it is D2C. More and more of it is B2B2C, or going through hospitals to the patient bed, or going through corporates to their employees. A lot of the direct-to-consumer healthcare hasn't landed very well, especially in the last 5 years. So there's investor fatigue, there's founder fatigue, there's operator fatigue, there's customer fatigue. Even very well-funded startups have not managed to crack a high LTV to CAC ratio. So in that sense, therefore, you have to be a little bit more practical as a founder and say, I may not need to go D2C anymore. I may have to build more efficient channels where I can collect my revenue upfront, maybe leave a little bit of margin on the table. So practical consensus on how the system works, accepting that, making your margin underneath that reality is vital. Most of these companies have had extraordinarily difficult times in their first 3 to 4 years. Funding has not been the issue. I'll be very blunt with you. They're all well funded. Funding was not the issue. They ran into challenges in actually growing revenue. So that is where the rubber hits the road. In this sector, you can't blame VCs. At least I say that. So it's very important for you as a founder, the operator, to have clear answers about revenue and the customer's needs before you go raise funding. Enough money has been wasted here. There is no more patience because the opportunity cost with other areas growing the way they are is very high. So when we look at the white spaces, I can only fit 6 on this graph. We'll probably have a report on this in the next couple of months and we'll publish more. But every single one of these verticals is massive, tens of billions of dollars. So I'll talk about continuing care, right? So think about the gap between, say, getting a knee surgery at Apollo and then, after you're done 3 days recovery, it's very expensive 3 days because the bed is very expensive and insurance company will fight with you. The time of billing will take 6, 7, 8 hours to get discharged. But you're finally out. You can't go home. You still need physiotherapy. You still need a nurse to visit. You still need checkups. You still need scans. You can't keep doing the trip from home to the hospital. Where is the step-down facility in India today? Right? There's an entire industry in the US called step-down facilities, SNFs as they're called. Hundreds of thousands of beds where patients can go and get the continuum of care that they need. Zero exists in India today, except 2 companies that have started, one in Kerala, one in Bangalore. The one in Bangalore now is worth, I think it's doing 150 crores of revenue, 20% EBITDA, getting a 7x on revenue multiple, closing a massive follow-on equity round. You've never heard of it, it's not in the news, quietly building beds, making an absurd amount of profit, right? My question to the room is, why isn't anyone building that business? Because that founder is not here. I know him, and he's not here. So this is my problem as a VC. When I see opportunity, when I see bottom line efficiency, I don't see health tech founders going after the obvious stuff, right? Everyone wants to build some healthcare AI that lives inside Twitter and tells you you're mentally sick and depressed. That's not, that's interesting, but these are obvious, larger, higher margin problems to also solve, but there's no innovation here. So look at the real white spaces, accept reality, build for it. Patients here are screaming for a solution, and there is no help, right? So that's why I would say, in health tech especially, because you're dealing with lives, because you're dealing with real problems, real patients, real people, real souls, a sensitivity to the pain is essential. And removing pain from people's lives, they pay the most money, if you think about it. And that's why this continuum care thing, if enough founders do a good job, that's going to be a 10, 20, $30 billion market in the next 10 years. It's elderly care, it's post-op care, it's surgical care, it's continuum care, it's all of that in the same facility. Insurance covered, so no payer problem. There's no reason not to start. Right? So I'm giving you an example of how these white spaces are so obvious and huge. If you study that white space, spend even 2 days on it, you will get that itch to start that company in real time. So finally, where are we seeing possible solutions and value accretion? So a lot of the companies we meet in health tech, unfortunately, are still in this wave 1, 2000 to 2010 type framework, where they're building basic software, basic apps. That's not solving anyone's real problem today. Right? No one wants another app, another workflow, another set of buttons to push. Doctors are overworked, nurses are tired, patients don't want more software in the middle of their care. So this is not a solution today. It wasn't relevant back then, it still isn't relevant today. We've breezed through this automation era. You can't name 2 telemedicine companies in India that you go back to and you trust long-term as a user, right? So clearly, this COVID hype cycle is crashed, and there's not much value there for real. The product market fit didn't happen. We have to be more eyes wide open in this wave, which is the precision era, platform era, and maybe we build for 2030 onwards. We pull the future a little bit closer to us today. India leapfrogs anyway. The customers don't make up their mind fast enough. Bring them something they can't say no to, right? So if I thought like a founder for the customer, I would start there and then figure out where they'll pay and find a median and then lock it there and start building that software. That's the only way I would see anyone here build 10, 20, 30 million of revenue in the first 5 years, like a software company should at 80% gross margins. But if you look at today's companies, this is the wave of innovation we've seen in the last 10 years. A lot of these are still subscale in revenue, right? The only thing that's raised a lot of money is maybe e-pharmacy. But if regulation wasn't as complicated as it was, Swiggy and Zomato and Zepto probably will be better at that than these companies. They just have a larger workforce, more utilization, higher availability. So those are not the businesses of the future. The others can be, but again, they have not figured out what the customer is going to pay for and how they make enough margins underneath that customer need. And therefore, when you look at the breakouts that are now coming out of these learnings, they're not building in the places where the most funding has already gone, because that has not worked. They're building in the places where they know the customers are going to pay going forward. So please don't look at the funding reports like this and say, therefore I should build pharma. No, that's the worst place to be. Right? That's dead, that's over, and too much money has been wasted. In fact, the few pharma companies that exist are buying hospitals or whatever, you've probably seen the news. So be very wary of this as a prediction of the future. It's not. It's a report card of the failures of the past. Right? And that's why a lot of these funding reports need to be read correctly. So where are investments going to go? And I think if you see now the health tech investments, they had their moment of sunshine. A lot of that didn't stick. Indian healthcare is deeply valuable. There's close to $10 billion of funding that's gone into hospitals alone. It's created around $40 billion of market cap, if you look at everything put together. Some big IPOs are coming, Manipal, for example, after the Temasek round. There is an absurd amount of investor interest in the basics of healthcare delivery in India. So there's no debating that. But the technology component of that interest has not yet been monetized, not yet been profitable, and not yet gotten the kind of investor love that exists out there to latch onto it. So if you're thinking about healthcare today, I hope you get to hear from Vikalp. You see companies like this building really interesting takes on where the future is going and showing you revenue almost immediately. So Vikalp has a phenomenal thesis. What NPCI did for money transfer between banks and UPI apps, build one standard, fix the rates, set reasonable MDRs, hopefully going up over time, built an entire industry that now is population scale. That is going to happen hopefully in healthcare very soon with ABA and the UHID interface. So this data store and this data pipeline between all providers and payers and all the PHR apps on top, this is going to be the UPI moment for Indian healthcare. We're very close. I think it's almost there, but it's still not becoming as mainstream as it can be. So innovators on the infra layer don't need to be on the infra layer anymore, thankfully. But building the best apps on top, understanding the customer's needs on both sides, and making sure that seamlessness is first experience on your app. That's where the race is today. And that's why companies like Eka are doing phenomenally well, building healthcare, horizontal healthcare AI platforms. If you see some of the numbers, I don't want to take away from Vikalp's talk, but if you see some of the numbers, absolutely incredible, the scale they've reached in less than 2 years. So that's a very interesting story, live examples of smart founders breaking out as we speak. I'll also talk about a hardware company, because I spoke a lot about building for AI manufacturing in India. Dozy, if you don't know already, has built one of the first sensor mats in the world that's FDA cleared. You can sleep on that bed as a patient in a contactless system, nothing on your skin, nothing on your body. 16 vitals are recorded in real time, digested in real time, analyzed by machine intelligence in real time, and your healthcare is predicted in terms of arrhythmias and so on. All of this in real time. So live remote patient monitoring without needing nurses and so on to come to your bed every 3 hours. Now to do all of this in India was thought impossible, right? But this is a 100-plus-year-old science, ballistocardiography. India has no right to win, having 8 patents, 15 publications, more now. But they're the first company to get an FDA clearance for something like this in less than 18 months. They're already live in the US. They're already scaling in those step-down facilities. They've been published now, I think, over 30 times. World record-setting AI applications in healthcare, predictive healthcare. And the most important thing is 19 out of 20 of India's largest hospital groups are now their paying customers. Something that I thought was impossible. No one in this room would have taken that bet. But this is an example, a clear example of how if you're solving the right need, right? I don't have enough nurses. I have too many beds. It's too expensive to pay for all these human beings to deliver care to my patients. I need automation. They adopted immediately. In fact, a lot of these hospitals took that first POC without that FDA clearance. The ISO certifications was sufficient in India. So for a company like this to do all of this in less than 4 years is incredible, right? And they're now going to the US, and I'm sure they'll do very well. But I'm giving you 2 examples of how on software and hardware and devices and manufacturing, India, US, wherever you are, innovation, the excuses are running out for blaming the market, blaming the VC, blaming someone else. Be precise in how you're thinking, work backwards from the customer. So if I were a betting man, I'm not, but if I were to take a bet, This is how we drew out our S-curve of health tech adoption. This is worth you know, digesting if you're thinking about innovation. I met someone in longevity here just now, fascinating gentleman. I would have argued longevity would have been a need today. Who wants to die early? Right? But somehow people aren't willing to pay for that in India yet. If you go to Japan, for example, you can joke, everyone wants to live more because they're already old. That's become a need of the hour. So wherever you're innovating, there's a need for that particular solution somewhere in the world, right? So be a little bit more practical about that if you're thinking globally. But there are some areas where there's no point innovating. So if you are calling yourself a digital twin today, I think the market's already dead, if not dying. But if you're an AI co-pilot, something, whatever, suddenly everyone wants you. It's the same thing. It's a different terminology, right? Slightly different interface. So also be practical about that marketing bit. I think that's really important. VCs are terrible at marketing, so they are behind the market in terms of what the vocabulary should be. The founders have to lead where the vocabulary is going. So be practical, and I'll close with this because my time's up. There are 5 clear reasons why a VC in India is going to say no to a health tech founder. You have to have an answer and a clear reason why you're even wasting your time if you don't have an answer to any of these 5 questions. The first thing is, if you are a generalist founder, you're just very smart guy, some consulting experience, you've never really been a doctor, a healthcare provider, healthcare professional, whatever, the bar for an innovator in health tech is very, very, very high today. It's higher than fintech also, and fintech is, in my opinion, the most over-regulated innovation vertical in India. So if you aren't that person, everything is going to be against the grain for you. No one's going to believe that you have the credibility to convince Dr. Balal and Manipal to buy your whatever silly software you're piloting with him, right? So the gravity you need to have, the gravity of credibility, and the domain expertise in the founding team, that's going to be maybe the first and biggest problem for a generalist team in this space. Assuming you are able to deal with that, you have to have clear answers for regulation, right? And I can tell you in health tech at least, regulation is not an India problem, it's a global problem, it's broken everywhere. There are many gatekeepers in India. I ran out of space to list all of them. There are price caps, constraints, margins, knee implant pricing, MRPs, all kind of nonsense that you have to work with. I am building companies that are 30% EBITDA, 50 million PAT in 3 years. Why would I waste my money here? It's a standard VC's response if you don't have a clear answer for this, right? So the opportunity cost of taking all this risk versus for another VC doing just a food delivery company, it's an obvious answer where the money is going to go. And then procurement and collections. Getting money out of these enterprises is very difficult. Anyone in this room will agree with me on that. What is your way to do it? Do you collect first? Do you have a payout system? Do you have a distribution engine in the middle? So the revenue operations, RevOps as it's called, is perhaps as important as sales. So don't forget about that, and that answer people are expecting early. There is a lot of VC money that's already gone into health tech. So again, like I said, you can't blame the VCs this time, but there's been very little ROI. Right? So don't be one of that Me Too type company. Have a clear reason for how all of us make money as shareholders if this thing is going to grow. And finally, build for the Indian IPO. That's why it's worth it. I rarely meet health tech founders who have belief in their own business going IPO in 10 years. I met a few now, and we're definitely very interested in those businesses. But most of the health tech founders say, I don't know about the exit, or one day Johnson & Johnson may buy me. Right? That's too ambiguous. We've reached a very different time in India in 2025. We have one of the best IPO markets in the world, the most rewarding, definitely. Build for that. And I think if you can, and I think we can, and I think we will, there is a lot of value to be created in doing the right thing, saving lives, bringing patients better care in the country. So with that, we'll close. Some of these slides will be made available to everyone. Thank you so much for your time.